Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme, exploring the genre of shoegaze. We've checked out some slow dive. We've checked out something else, LSD in the Search for God. Now it's time to check out Kitchens of Distinction. I'll tell you, man, some of these band names are wild. But I've heard that this is a really good one for this week, so I'm excited to get into it. This comes off of their Strange Free World album, which came out in 1991, which marks this, I believe, as the earliest track we're going to check out this week. We're going to look at the first track of the album called Railwayed. Let's dive in, see what's going on. This is interesting because it has a little bit of new wave influence in it. Is that a tambourine hit? It's interesting too because we've gone through a couple of different sections, but the overall vibe and atmosphere has been identical throughout. There we go. So I thought the chorus was earlier, but it's just probably the chorus, right? The instruments are pushed way out to the sides, and that means that there's a lot of micro alterations within the verse then. Even this, another variation on the verse. We have this driving. Oh, well now we have vamping on top. I can't get over how spacious there is. There's so much emptiness in the middle. The instruments are so far out to the extent of the sounds. The levity here, kind of bringing the sound up for a brighter, more positive element. There are 3 or 4 instruments on the outside here, creating a rather dense wall. Huh. Well, oh geez, I thought I had him figured out, and to be honest, I did. But they threw in one curveball there at the end. The fifth to last chord was just tension. This song had played, of course, with tension. You need tension in your chord progression in order to make the resolution, the return back to home, feel good. You need the contrast. But this was pure dissonance. It really felt like the song was beginning to spiral down the drain, and I thought they were going to lean into this to wrap the song up, but they never played another chord like this. I try to give bands the benefit of the doubt. I really want to assume that that was done intently? Yeah, intently. But honestly, it kind of feels like a mistake. No other chord goes that hard into dissonance, and it didn't lead into anything either. It's a one-off idea. I don't know how to interpret that. That was such a bizarre way to wrap the song up. On the topic of shoegaze, what I learned out of this, it kind of fits nicely with the dreamier side that we saw with slow dive, and the more what I assume is the traditional sound, the grittier wall of sound thing that we got yesterday with LSD. This kind of fits in that middle realm. It is dreamy, but it's also kind of gritty. It's very fuzzy. It does go for something more atmospheric and light, but it also has the grit to it. It also goes for the wall of sound. It goes for the overbearing element. This has been a very enlightening week from my understanding of this genre, and I am infinitely happy and grateful for the community for picking this. Regardless of where the next two songs take us, I've already learned a lot. I mean, there's still plenty to learn, right? 3 songs, they're not going to tell you everything about a genre, but I do feel like I am immensely more capable of not just talking about shoegaze, but being able to recognize it in more of its shapes and sizes than I was before the week started. So I'm quite happy. This is a good start to a week. There's definitely been genre weeks when we get through and either one, it just wasn't what I signed up for. The genre umbrella was too big and I was expecting a small portion of it and got none of it. But there's also been weeks where by the end of the week, I'm just, what did I learn about this genre? What does it mean? Like I just wasn't really that educated on it. It was too vast or too broad for me to really get a grasp on, or maybe it's too technical. Things went over my head. This is highly educational, and I'm digging it. All right. To kick it off, though, there's a big new wave element in this, and I wonder if there is a relationship between new wave and shoegaze or dream pop in this entire, new era of this sound. What predated it, though? Did this really come out of the new wave, end of the 70s, 80s kind of sound right there? Because I hear a lot of that in here, and that's interesting. I think a lot of it has to do with the way that reverb is placed in here. It's the place of instrumentation as well. A lot of use of spaciousness, a lot of use of repetition, and also the vocal delivery. Something about that also really dates this track. What did I say? 91 for this? Yeah. Yeah, something about the way the vocals are produced, both physically and on the engineering side of things, it dates it. I would immediately figure that this was either of the time or a revival scene trying to bring back the sound of the time. Some music is timeless. Some music is definitely of its era. And this one feels of its era. But I did find that to be interesting. We do have the guitars on the outsides, and they bring a lot of layers of texture in here. And I think this is what is more of the defining shoegaze sound on this track. Although it's an early kind of shoegaze. But once again, it's the production that gives it its defining flavor. Just like the vocals, the production on this. I'd even say that the production for the drums and the bass being as dominant as they are in the mix and as smooth as they are. The drums have a slight bit of aggression to them, but they're rather chill, really rounded off. The bass is a very rounded sound. It is smooth, it is flat, it's got a bit of punch to it, but it isn't abrasive, it isn't sharp. Very round, soft sounds. And the two of these together basically create a lot of room for everything else by taking up as little space as they need to while being prominent in the mix. And this is important because there's a lot of other things going on. This is the major thing that stands out to me in this song, not relating to a genre or anything. There's a lot going on. You have your vocals, you have your drum and bass. Your drum and bass lay down the foundation for pretty much every section. They have their own area in the middle of the track carved out. Everything else dances around that. The verse, they're a little closer. The chorus, everything feels very far away. But no matter what, there's a little bit of space around the drum and the bass to give you this solid rhythmic sound at the center of the track with nothing overlapping it. It is very clear. But it's also not the prominent element. It's not really in the spotlight. The vocals have a bit of prominence. They're very easy to latch onto, very easy to find in the mix. But there's a lot of other things going on. A lot of them. And this is what I find really interesting about this. We have guitars, we have synths probably also, and they're doing all sorts of little ideas. We'll have some call and response. We'll have the guitars do something, and then some synths, and then the guitars, and then the synths, and then the guitars, and then different guitars are going to play something totally different here. And then we're going to have the old guitars there, and then the new guitars, and then a new synth line. And the back and forth just continues to evolve. I had mentioned that we had reached about the minute and a halfway point into this track. And I said that there's been a lot of little movements in it, but that it feels rather similar. That atmospherically, the chord progression and the beat haven't really changed much. The vocal melody hasn't really changed much. But I found that I can break this down. At that point in time, I had really thought I was breaking down verses and choruses. And that's not the case, because there's a drastic change around minute 145 or so when we actually go into the chorus. It is a totally different vibe, totally different production, totally different soundscape, drastic change in everything. The verse was just that diverse. There were so many smaller, nuanced ideas going on in that. Removal of lines, addition of lines. I mentioned that there's a back and forth. There's so much in this track in particular where we kind of get this call and response. Sometimes the call and response is silence too. You'll get a riff and then you'll get nothing. Then you'll get the riff and then you'll get nothing. Then you'll get the riff and then a response riff. And it's sort of this conversational buildup where the atmosphere, the chords, the beats, the core melody are all the same. But the guitar and the synth are just kind of having fun over here, trading turns, sometimes trading with silence, sometimes trading with each other, sometimes trading with themselves. Maybe there's multiple guitarists, multiple synths, but a guitar will call and another guitar will respond. And they'll stick with these licks for a while and then change them. And then drastically change instrumentation. And it feels like a constant evolution. It makes it feel more linear, despite the heavy static cyclicality in every other piece of this verse. It is really fascinating to listen to this track, and it almost feels as if it's in two minds. One that just wants to sit in this vibe, in this fuzz, in this emotion, and absorb it. And the other that literally cannot sit still and has to constantly jump around between all sorts of different ideas. And listening to this song try to balance these two compositional styles is fascinating. I don't know how I should read into that. Maybe it's just a quirk of the band. Maybe one guitarist really likes to keep progressing and the rest of the band, they're cool just crafting a vibe. Maybe it's thematically purposeful to the song. I'll revisit this when we hit the lyrics, I suppose, and see if I can find some parallel ideas there. But honestly, it's really interesting from a purely musical standpoint to hear this duality within the track. Now, I mentioned that the chorus is big. And I kind of hope that you heard it too. It really surprised me the first time. Sure, I'm not expecting it, but the second time I know it's coming. And yet I was still surprised by just how big it is. It's almost like I forgot how large the sound could get. And when we come back to it, I know it's going to be bigger than the verse. There's going to be a lot of space in the middle. And yet it was still larger. The sounds were pushed so far out to the side that it caught me off guard, even expecting it. I don't know that I have some larger purpose to talk about this, some way of working it into some grander scheme of narrative, of a reason why they would have done this because it matches so elegantly with the verse. No, I don't. It is surprising. I don't know if anyone else feels this way. It's just, what is a better word for this? I keep saying surprising, but I feel like it's not entirely accurate. There's almost a childlike joy to it, of being caught off guard, of having your expectations rendered so small, despite knowing what you're in store for and not being able to accurately remember that because it was so wild the first time. Part of your brain was just like, yeah, okay, it's going to be bigger, get ready for that, but it's not going to be that big. There's no way it could be that big. And then it is. I don't know, dude, the production on that is wild, but I also find it really interesting because it has a wall of sound vibe. The guitars and the synths that are on the outsides here are stacked. Lots of fuzz, lots of layers, lots of compression. But they are out to the side. When I think of wall of sounds, I think of the ocean. I think of Cult of Luna. I think of these massive stacks that just take up the entire sound sphere, just filling up the entire space. And this is like a wall in a subdivision where there needs to be a break in it for some reason. Maybe there's a pond that needs to go through it. And you have these walls on these two sides, but you can clearly see between them. It's a broken, staggered wall of sound. And that's kind of, again, bizarre. It's just not what I expect. And I think that's partly what kept catching me off guard, not just the size of these instruments, not just how far out they were, but the combination of these two, these giant stacks of instruments on the periphery, not front and center, not there for you to dive into and feel it wash over you, not there to be a weight that pushes you down, but sort of just blinders on the outsides of your vision. I don't know. I have no parallels for that. I can't think of another song that I've heard that does that. And so it's really difficult for me to come at it from any angle other than novelty, surprise, joy, even. It tickles my fancy. It's a surprising thing. And then we bring the sound back in. But this verse is different. Much like the first verse couldn't stand still, this one decided not to repeat too much of the guitar and synth lines. The melody, yeah, that's pretty close. Might even be the exact same vocal melody. Drum and bass, yeah, they're laying down a very similar groove. Might even be the same groove. Atmosphere, check. Pretty sure that's the same chord progression. The guitar and synth, nope. Brand new ideas, brand new licks, brand new calls and responses, brand new movement. It's just, I love it. You know, I talk about this often is contrast. If you're going to do something twice, do it a little different the second time. Put some variation on your work. We certainly get that with the verses. Not so much the choruses, interestingly, but the verses all seem to be a little bit different. The bridge does give us a little taste of what I would call a more classic shoegaze sound. That wall of sound, the heavy stack of instrumentation finally closes in a little bit more. It's still a rather spacious mix, but it does feel a bit more enveloping than the other sections of the song. And that takes us to the ending. Return back to one of the earlier sections. I think it was the chorus, then wrapping the song up from there. I still find this to be a very interesting track. Kept me on my toes, gave me a great midpoint for what we've listened to on sort of the extreme ends of shoegaze prior this week. Yeah, educational and entertaining, great to listen to, and difficult to capture, I suppose. It always wanted to do what it wanted to do, and that makes it a fun little thing to listen to. Let's move into some lyrics then. See what's going on there. Now, this is an interesting topic for a song. It is written in the third person. We have a narrator here looking at a relationship between a father and his daughter. But the father is always out of town, and the daughter just wants him to stay home when he comes back. So verse 1 says, softly, softly comes the train into the station. She has often waited and wondered if he'll come. Why has he kept her waiting, held from coming home now? Was it troubled loyalty or a brand new family? Will he step down onto the platform? Will he stay now or go again? Softly something comes, a feeling that she loves him, remembering his birthday and sentimental times. Was she really that bad to force him to silence? Were her tears forgotten? Or was it just that letter of pain? Daddy, will you stay this time? Daddy, will you walk away? So we have this girl who just wants to spend time with her dad and notices that he's gone all the time. She gets to see him every so often, meets him when he comes in from work or the city, wherever he goes, meets him at the train station, but always knows that he's going to get back on the train later and leave. And she writes a letter. Will you just stay this time or will you walk away? The chorus kicks in. It's the narrator telling the father in the situation what to do. Shower her with your tears. Give to her that lovely lost look. Open those cold blue eyes and promise her there will be no more goodbyes. We have another verse that continues on the same idea, kind of coming at it from the girl's perspective about what she says and what she wants. And then we have two more choruses telling the father to be there for his kid. No more goodbyes, no more surprises. I like that. Now, what that has to do with the music? Dude, I don't know. I'm not going to say that I had an emotional read on this song. It really grabbed me from more of an intellectual, technical standpoint of things. But even beyond that, I don't think that I would have ever come to this story as a reading of the song. But I think about it, and there's a lot of brightness in this track, but I think there's a lot of sections that just kind of are. Not sad, but not happy either. I'm curious if that's supposed to represent the girl's emotions. Fine when her dad's away, but elated when he comes back home. Wanting to stick with that elation. Maybe that's also why the instruments are so distant in the chorus. It's the space between the two people. I'm not entirely sure. After all, these are just my thoughts about this. I'd love to hear the authorial intent, though, if this band has ever announced it in, I don't know, a press release or an interview or something like that. If you know anything about that, please link it in the description. I'd love to read or watch. Otherwise, though, let's wrap this up. Did you enjoy this? Is there anything that stood out to you in it? Do you have your own interpretation of things, your own opinion or perspective on this track? Please put all of that down in the comments section, along with any other thoughts you might have about this song. Above that, in the description box, is a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.